Hello, fellow seekers. Welcome back to the Law of One Spiritual Advice podcast. My name is Elle, and I return again today to share with you some spiritual philosophy. And depending on which title I go with for this and which one brought you into it, it's going to be about the most powerful thing in the universe, which is often hijacked by others, sort of hijacking our desires. And that most powerful thing in the universe is our will, desire, or maybe our focus or attention, you might call it, which is actually a form of magic. So in this regard, we're also going to be talking about how you can't save everyone, really. When you're trying to help and seek and serve, it's not always your responsibility to save every single person. And we're going to speak about how that is related to the will to know, the will to seek, the will to understand and to serve. And so with that, let us just get right into it. The will is the most powerful thing in the universe because it guides energy. It commands consciousness. The way that the universe was created, there is an infinity of potential. The Creator has granted us, or you or we, all of us, free will to use this potential as we see fit. So what do we want to do with an infinity of potential? How shall we seek? What do we seek? What do we desire? How shall we tap this potential and make it into work? Because like electricity, it is like a battery. I would explain it as if you have an infinite battery, a battery with infinite potential, infinite energy within this battery. But that is just undifferentiated energy. There's not anything to do with that energy. So that is the infinite potential that exists in the universe. And you must place that infinite potential, that battery, into something, some type of device in order for it to do something, to create work. Because otherwise it doesn't have anything to do or anything to run through. It just sits there. So you can think of your will as a device, an electronic device to make it very simple for you. Your will is like the device that the battery is placed into, and what will you do with that energy? What is the device that you would like to create? That is the questions you should be asking yourself about your will and your desire, and because those are two and the same things. What will you make into light? What will you manifest? What will you create? What will you be a part of? And maybe even what is the ultimate will? We're going to get into that later. But you'll understand maybe how the direction of your attention, which is basically your will, your focus, your desire, how that is the tool in which you are able to operate in this universe. And I call it the most powerful thing in the universe because that is all the universe is infinite potential tapped by free will to create light and to create love. Well, actually, love came from before that, but to create forms of love in the form of light. So what is it that you will manifest? In fact, what is it that you desire? Because a lot of people don't think about this at all, and they take it for granted that they are just living their lives and they have their own desires and they know what they want. But do you really know what you want? Do you really know what you desire? What if somebody took all the gadgets away from you and put you in a dark room and took away all the things that you think maybe are important to you? What would it be that you truly desired in that moment? And that is the type of thing that I want to pull out of you today. And that is the type of thing that I want to at least just bring to your attention, to bring to your focus, because there's a lot of people or corporations or groups or whatever you would like to call them out there who are focused on hijacking your desires, on hijacking your attention. Because like I said, it's the most powerful thing in the universe. And what are you going to do with the most powerful thing in the universe? Are you just going to let others run amok with it? Or if you're a sort of a negative person on this planet, would you maybe seek to hijack that most powerful thing on this planet in order to serve yourself, right? That's the way they see it, at least. And the way that I see it is that I want to enlighten you as to the power of your own free will, and therefore basically empower you to seek as you see fit and to have you actually ask deep questions that matter, that bring you to a place that isn't just distraction and sleep. Because a lot of us here are just doing that. We're just running in circles, being distracted, sleeping, and and distracting other selves as well. So why do you think people spend so much money on advertising? I'm not sure if you're aware, but if you've ever looked into the financials of many corporations, a large sum of their portfolio goes towards advertising. And you sort of think like, well, what the heck's the point? You're just giving all this money to people to spend a lot of time to create one like 30-second piece that's going to be seen by a lot of people. And that's exactly it, my friends. It's because that is the magic. That is the programming. That is, why do you think they call it television programming? It is to program program you. It is to program your desires. It's to program you to think that there maybe isn't anything more out there. There isn't an infinity of potential out there at your fingertips. We know most of the things in the universe. Science has it figured out. You don't need to fret and frown. You should just go to your job and work to make money and buy, things that satisfy the small portion of your ego, which I would suggest is not the ultimate sort of goal of our seeking and the ultimate goal of our universe. A lot of people are out there doing that, and that's okay. And that's why we're going to talk about how we can't necessarily save those types of folks. Not necessarily, shouldn't say the word save. We're not trying to be heroes here. We're just trying to share ourselves. But, you see people sleeping and distracted, and you would like to try to help them. So the direction of your attention is the most powerful force in the universe, and that's why people spend a lot of money on trying to influence it and to point it in the direction of, I suppose, sleep, but really they try to mostly point it in the direction of selling you something so that they can make money off of it, because, money is power in a way, and so by directing your attention towards something that allows them to gain power from it is sort of what's happening, I would suggest, on a very large scale with a lot of our culture and our world. So I don't want to get into too much esotericness about the law of one type of stuff in terms of veiling and not veiling, but just to make it really easy and quick is that we live in a 3D experience, which means that when we incarnate here, we come behind a veil. So we forget everything. We have amnesia. We basically come to a place in the universe where we do not know. So prior to that, maybe you could think of yourself as, prior to coming into incarnation, you may think of yourself as being in the know, as absolutely understanding everything. In other words, you know the connection to the Creator, you know the infinity of your being, you know that you are infallible in the creation in terms of being portion of the one infinite Creator, and nothing could ever harm you in that sense, okay? So when you're in that know, there isn't a lot of magic that you can create. There is a ton of potential to tap, but there isn't a lot of actual desire to tap that magic, you may state, because when you're all knowing and you're sort of understanding that you're unconditionally loved no matter what, there isn't really a push to do a lot of stuff. So what's happened here when we come into this 3D veiled experience of forgetting everything, when we have no conscious, let's say, connection to the Creator in a way, what happens is that we develop pure will. We develop a pure desire. It is a desire which is untarnished by the absolute knowing that the one infinite Creator is the thing behind all of this. So what happens is that by you coming to a place of unknowing, that in turn, the only way that you're able to know anything is by pointing your will to know something in the direction of whatever that may be, and that thing coming to you. So in session 85.19, Ra states, perhaps the most important and significant function that occurred due to the veiling of the mind from itself is not in itself a function of mind, but rather is a product of the potential created by this veiling. This is the faculty of will, or pure desire. End of that part of the quote. And then in another section, they talk about how this pure desire and this will is magic. So in session 79.33, Ra states, magical ability is the ability to consciously use the so-called unconscious. End of quote. So what is it that the will and the desire and all of that is? It is basically the unconscious deep mind of yourself. It is that portion, like I said, when you strip all of the surface illusions off of yourself, what remains? What remains there, my friend? What remains? I can tell you what remains from my understanding and from my being, and that is the will to serve. And there's not really any words I can say that can give you an explanation as to why that may be, other than to just understand the unity of oneness, in that when you strip away everything from the self, all that remains is the self. And when you see other selves out there who are a portion of you, you see them, in pain and distraction and sleep. You really see it like a portion of yourself which is hurting, and therefore you wish, in empathy, to attempt to serve them as you will. And so I do believe that sort of the deepest will and the deepest desire is that desire to serve. You could even go down a further route with that, which would be more so, what is the will of the Creator, which is another thing of saying, thy will be done. It's another way of saying that you just wish the best for somebody. You wish to serve them. You wish to assist. So what is it that I'm saying is will and desire and magic and this focus and attention? It's basically you using the unconscious portion of your mind. You can think of your heartbeat and your breathing. All of these things seem to be very automatic, but they are programs that are running in your mind. They're just running unconsciously. And that is very much the nature of our being, to my understanding, is that a lot of the, let's call it the manifestations even of our reality, and even the larger manifestations of the group consciousness, are a lot of unconscious manifestations of our group mind, you might say. So you would think of it as micro or macro. It doesn't really matter. You can think of it as yourself, or you can think of it as the group self, but there's a lot of unconscious portions of ourself that are sort of hijacked and meandering about, which means that our will is in 1,000 directions, and it's creating a lot of chaos and confusion on this earth. Whereas if what we could do is sort of enlighten ourselves as to the use and the power behind the deep mind and the unconscious portions of our mind, we can sort of shine light on them, and with that we can bring meaning to things, and we can put our attention and focus on the things that are important, which are things like the lessons of love and the desire to serve and to assist other people and to do good things, to do creative things on this planet, to do whatever it is that your heart desires, that you can sort of see as a positive gift, a positive thing to do. What is that tool that you shall create within yourself that shall channel that energy out into this world? Or will you just pretend that you don't have any power and keep running around with your head cut off like the chicken who then has other people telling them what they think they desire, and or what you want is a vacation, and what you want is a fancy car, and what the heck do you really want, my friend? What do you want? Strip away the surface desires, the surface illusions, all of the surface parts of the personality, and what may lie underneath that, my friend, is a magical thing. And that magical thing is your consciousness and the way in which you point it in the direction. What do you focus on? What it is that you're focusing on? Is it something of a beneficial nature? Is it something that is helping you? Or is it just lost and confused, like many of us are, such as are the effects of television and our social media and our cell phones and all of that type of stuff? So I'm going to read you a quick section from session 34.13. The questioner asks, what is the general overall effect of television on our society with respect to this catalyst? Ross states, without ignoring the green ray attempts of many to communicate via this medium such information, truth, and beauty as may be helpful, we may suggest that the sum effect of this gadget is that of distraction and sleep. End of quote. Once again, reiterating the fact that although there are many attempts, such as this podcast, to communicate to other selves, the benefits of seeking the self and knowing the self and learning the lessons of love and compassion and understanding and all of that fun stuff, what do they say? The sum overall effect of these gadgets is that of distraction and sleep. So, try your best to not trick yourself. Like, I know we use our cell phones to often connect with other selves and to create that sense of community and inspiration in ourselves. But you are like me, I'm sure, and you may have found yourself from time to time picking up that cell phone. As soon as you've closed the apps, you've put it down and you pick it up again 10 seconds later and open up the same apps. What the heck are you doing? What are we doing, right? Yeah, that's right. I know you because I know me. So there you go. There's an idea of some of this distraction and sleep. So now let's get into a little bit more about the about why we can't necessarily save anybody. And the idea is that the will is different in different people. We each have free will. I haven't necessarily called it that yet throughout the podcast, but it is technically we have free will. And what is the word in there that is important is free. So with a free will, part of that plunging into this veil of forgetting, we become completely free to choose what we want, which means we can choose what we would like to know and what we would not like to know, let's say. And maybe the more that people try to distract us and tell us that life is about other things, it might be easier to just forget about the maybe actual important things. So the idea is that there is a lot of people out there, and it's best that we try not to judge them. Maybe they're being wonderful, loving beings. They don't necessarily need to know about metaphysical material to be a good person, but there are still some that you may consider as being very distracted and sleepy, and in that there is not a ton you can do other than just to wish them the best and to keep on doing your thing in seeking the truth of yourself and being a good example of what you wish to see in other selves. So why do some learn faster than others? It states here in session 28.14, the questioner asks, is there any reason for some portions being much more efficient in learning? And Ra states, I am Ra. Is there any reason for some to learn more quickly than others? Look, if you wish, to the function of the will, the, shall we say, attraction to the upward spiraling line of light. End of quote. That's just a fancy way of saying look at the chakra system, but really that's a portion of your mind. So it's basically saying, look to the mind and look to the will, and what is it that you seek? What is it, the function of your will seeking? What is it attracted to? It is always going to be attracted upwards, like a flower growing towards the light. Everyone will have that natural want or instinct to go towards that light. However, the people's will to, grow towards that light will vary, and therefore they may grow slower or quicker depending on really just their will to seek. So it is not up to you to grab a hold of somebody's will and force it in a certain direction. All you can do, like I said, is be a good example of the will that you want to exemplify in the world, and then to hope that others will pick up on that power that you are exemplifying, and they will often be attracted to asking you certain types of questions as to how did you come to be such a certain kind of person, and you can be free to share with them, and they may be very open to listening at that point, whereas before they may have been very closed down and not ready for it at all. Which is another very important part of some of this material, which I didn't grab the number of where this is in the material, but Ra states elsewhere, consider, if you will, the path your life experience complex has taken. Consider the coincidences and odd circumstances by which one thing flowed to the next. Consider this well. Each entity will receive the opportunity that each needs. And then it continues on, and I don't have it in front of me, but something about this information source beingness does not serve a part in the usefulness of everyone's life at this point. In other words, metaphysical understandings and things of that nature are quite of a high order, and it's not necessary that everyone needs to understand exactly what's going on. What you can know and take to the bank, if you will, is that through the faith and the sort of ultimate wisdom and infinity and the infinite flexibility of the one infinite creator, it doesn't matter which path we go down, where we go in the creation, the creator is there with us and is part of infinity, which can bend to an infinity of circumstances. So it doesn't really matter which circumstances and odd coincidences happen, they will happen in a way in which everything will work out. Everything is going to be just fine. Some, it might seem in certain regards that some people seeking or non-seeking, you may see, is a little bit tragic, and it may be, but those are circumstances, my friend, and they will lead one thing to the next, which will get them to the place that they need to be, because they are already where they need to be. Everyone is where they need to be at all times, and that is because their will decides where they be in this universe, and the creator says it is so. It is so. With your free will, you may do as you please. So consider that well. Why do some seek and some don't? Those receive what is needed according to their will. This is appropriate. We need to trust. We need to have faith in the Creator. We need to know that all is well, and all learn at their own pace, and that is going to be just perfectly fine. And I'm sure this is going to get a little bit long, so I don't want to go too much. I did have some stuff about the death of the small self, but I already talked about that. That is like the stripping of the surface illusions. And they talk about how when you are going through a sort of initiation, that is the idea of initiation, is basically that the body, symbolically dies. In other words, the small self of the experience dies, and through the transformation and apparent loss and realization of what is actually important, we gain that will, that new transmuted will, and that is, risen into a new being, which then can conquer the universe as it has stripped itself of all the petty parts of its being that aren't necessarily important, that we maybe thought were very important before. Okay, I better read the quote. 65.20. Ra states, one meets the self in the center or deeps of the being. The so-called resonating chamber, like in the pyramids, may be likened unto the symbology of the burial and resurrection of the body, wherein the entity dies to the self, and through this confrontation of apparent loss and realization of essential gain is transmuted into a new and risen being. The questioner then asks, could I make the analogy of in this apparent death losing the desires that are illusory, common desires of third density, and gaining the desires of total service to others? Ra answers, you are perceptive. This was the purpose and intention of this chamber. So kind of tying that back into the beginning there, where we're talking about the desire of being pointed in the direction of service to others, it's basically because my understanding is that when you have that ego death and that seeming loss of your small self, what is born of that is a beautiful portion of an open heart, of unity, which sees other selves as a portion of the self and seeks to serve. Because if you yourself are taken care of to a sort of minimal degree, then it sort of feels natural that you would want to branch out and attempt to serve others. Because why wouldn't you want to help yourself as other selves are ourselves? Okay, and then we are just going to wrap it up with a tiny bit of a warning. Oh, yes, indeedy, a warning, because it's not always about love, because with love comes light. Love is lovey-dovey, and light is wisdom-y. So I want to warn you about the use of the unconscious mind without due care, about the use of the will and the use of your desire without due care. You get the same level of purity that you seek. So if you seek to program your mind for certain gifts or treasures, it would be well that they be pointed in the direction of your chosen polarity. In other words, I'm just assuming service to others polarity. Because if it's used to gain that fame and fortune or proof or whatever it is that sort of the small self kind of wants and often will put itself in the way and attempt to hijack your experience, it's likely going to result in receiving distortions of one kind or another. Or in other words, it's going to lessen the purity of your intention to serve and lessen the purity of your intention and your will to know. And therefore, you're going to get something that is less pure. And so I shall not try to explain any further than read you the quote in session 99.8. Ra mentions, many use the trunk and roots of the mind as if that portion of the mind were a badly used prostituted entity. Then this entity gains from this great storehouse that which is rough, prostituted, and without great virtue. Those who turn to the deep mind, seeing in it the guise of the maiden, go forth to court it. The courtship has nothing of plunder in its semblance, and may be protracted, yet the treasure gained by such careful courtship is great. End of quote. And that is a veiled statement indeed, my friends, but sometimes we need to speak in metaphors to sort of get a concept across. So they are sort of stating here that those who turn to the deep mind, seeing in it the guise of the maiden, in other words, those who seek love, that they seek it from a pure part of themselves that wishes to communicate the beauty and the truth and the love of the one infinite creator with others. To me, that is seeing it in the guise of the maiden. It just means to seek that treasure and use the will and point it in that area, in that focus of an area which isn't seeking to plunder the treasures of the chest and say, give me the answers to the universe, because then I shall be the most knowing and the most wise and the most spiritual and the most humble, lol, right? So if you go into it like with the lower level of seeking, and I could even give you a very definitive philosophy, which is the law of attraction philosophy. And I'm not saying that it's all wrong and the people that believe in the law of attraction are anything in the wrong. It's just that is sort of the first level of seeking that you get to with this understanding the unity of the universe. And what happens is that I suppose it's okay to play with those energies at first just to understand that they're real, but you try to manifest like something fancy for yourself, something wonderful, some kind of like a car or some money or some kind of gadget, right? And that is what they're stating here by using sort of your will and that portion of your mind as a badly prostituted entity, as they stated here. You're going to get that which is of equal value back. Whereas if you go forth like to seek the maiden and to share love and from an honest place that doesn't have anything of semblance of plunder, then you shall gain something that is of unspeakable words. There would probably be not a lot of words that you would be able to put into that type of experience, because many of those experiences are of silence or are unspeakable things. It wouldn't be even appropriate for me to probably share what some of those treasures that you may gain are, but I promise you that you will feel it in your heart when you do. So I shall remind you that the common saying that has gone around for many a time, which is that if there is a will, there is a way. Do you think that those statements stick around and resonate with people just because? Or do you think that you know that as a sort of cliche, maybe because it holds a little bit more resonance and truth than some other things? So if there is a will, there is a way. This is a statement about infinity. If there is a will to know, a will to seek, then the infinite potential of the universe and the infinite flexibility of the one infinite creator shall find a way for that to happen for you. And I'm getting a sort of unconscious cue in my head to finish this podcast with one final quote, even though I thought this was going to be it. So my one final quote is going to be about infinity and how we need to not turn our focus and attention away from infinity. The distraction and the sleep and the TV is going to try their best to pull you into some sure type of thinking about the, may I say, the negative outcomes of many things that are going to be happening in our timeline. And I want you to remember that within you is a piece of infinity, and within this existence is an infinity as well. And that means that there is infinite potential, which means that nothing is for certain. So although there may be much doom and gloom and many things to choose from on the shelf which seem to be of a negative nature, there is always that one box, that one container in the grocery store of your mind or of our collective experience that contains love and light and peace. And it is only in understanding and knowing, and we can putting our focus on that one container, that one infinite possibility container, that we are all focusing our will in the same area. And when we focus our wills together on the love of infinity, it's more powerful than you think, and we are probably changing the outcome of this universe together. And the fact that you listen to this now or later or a year from now won't matter, because time is an illusion and we are one always and now. And so join me, my friends, in a moment of trying to respect and honor that infinity in every moment, that great potential which says that there is much items to choose on the shelf that are of a negative nature, but we shall hope and have faith that the one positive outcome that is possible is something to hold on to, and to at least, maybe not hold on to as an ideal, but at least just to hold on to as a perspective. So I'll read you the quote. In session 65.12, they state, We may note at this point, while you ponder the possibility-probability vortices, that although you may have many, many items which cause distress and thus offer seeking and service opportunities, there is always one container in that store of peace, love, light, and joy. This vortex may be very small, but to turn one's back upon it is to forget the infinite possibilities of the present moment. Could your planet polarize towards harmony in one fine, strong moment of inspiration? Yes, my friends, it is not probable, but it is ever possible. End of quote. And that is a much more eloquent way of saying what I was just attempting to state. So there it is, my friends. I will leave you with your focus on that one container and hopes that we may enlarge in it, let's say. So much love, my friends. Thank you for listening. May you give this podcast a like. Can you please subscribe to the channel if you'd like to hear more in the future? You can visit my webpage at theoneinfinitecreator.com, and there are links to the LL research material who provides us all of this for free. And at the same time, you can scroll down on theoneinfinitecreator.com to the support section if you find value in what I do here, as I seek to serve and give of myself for free. That does require some sustenance, as I am a human being. And so if you would like to, please join my Patreon or shoot me a one-time PayPal. I am infinitely grateful. You can be a part of assisting me in freely serving in this way and allowing me the opportunity and time that it takes to, make these types of podcasts and posts on Instagram and all of that wonderful stuff. So thank you for believing in me. Thank you for being a part of this whole operation, because without you, I don't know if I would still be kicking around, but you never know. Maybe my will to serve is a little harder than I thought it was. So my friends, thank you for listening. I love you. Take care and have a wonderful rest of the week.